Bernardino. So right now I will hand it over to Chris.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to remind everyone, the community was very interested in having a directory of templates that we all use. I know that I have stood on the shoulders of many others and pulled down templates when I needed to get something done and was able to quickly start what I needed and then adapt it as I went. And I know that many of us are in the same position. So there was an idea to have our own curated directory of the templates that we all use. So we did create the form, which you see linked in the presentation. There is, don't forget the secret code, just to keep people from spamming, that we don't, not us, from submitting forms. Feel free to definitely attach the template, and feel free to provide some information about it. There's a team of, I think, 5 people now that has volunteered to go through those templates and curate them in a way that makes them easily discoverable, and makes it quick too. When I need to do something specific, I can go and find that specific kind of template that I need to use or see. So thank you very much for volunteering. The templates have started trickling in, so very soon we'll start curating them and posting them. So thank you all very much.
Great, thanks, Chris. So now I will hand it over to today's keynote speaker, Chris Bradney, again from California State University, San Bernardino. I am going to stop sharing, Chris, so you can begin.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. Well, I would say good afternoon, but it's good morning for me here in California. So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're from. Thank you all for having me. I'm really excited to share this all with you. And if you do catch the reference, the title of this presentation was started as a Star Wars reference. We did brand it as a Star Wars presentation, but I was able to take that out and generalize it a little bit more. So we didn't plan this, that we're going to have 2 Star Wars themed presentations in a row, but that's where we're starting. So we're talking about this concept of the project management liaison. That's really what's at the heart of this. So let me get started and talk a little bit about CSUSB. So we were founded in 1965. We're one of the 23 campuses in the CSU system. And so we're right here nestled against the San Bernardino Mountains in Southern California. We had about 20,000 students enrolled this last year in 2020, and with more than 1,000 faculty and staff across the university. So that's a little bit about the background of the university itself, to hopefully context this a little bit. Now, I came into this role just about 13 months ago. And so coming in, we identified some challenges. One of those challenges was that project management was not unified across our ITS division. We had what I like to call individual centers of excellence. We had individuals that were doing a phenomenal job managing and running their projects, but we had others that had very little expertise or knowledge in it. And so we really tried to provide or we really looked at that and said, there's no standardization, there's no optimization across. The one thing that we did have in place, we did have our central PM tool, but we really didn't have an idea of how we wanted to use that across the division. Everybody was using it in their own unique ways, and so it really made standardization, reporting, things like that really, really difficult. And so we came into this understanding that we had a need, right? And that need was we needed to standardize project management, we needed to utilize some best practices, and we really needed to find a way to make what we had work for us, make that PM tool work, meet our project needs for everybody, not just a few, but we also needed to make sure that we could report out across all the division what ITS projects we were working on, because we don't really have a strong central PMO. I'm the one project manager in that office. But we have people that are skilled in it across the division. So that's really the kind of where we came from, what we were looking at. And so then we started to strategize, how do we solve this problem? How do we meet these needs? And we came up with this idea, what we called the Project Management Liaison. And so what we did is we found those people that were really excelling in projects, really excelling in managing those projects across the university. And we said, hey, they've got the skills, they've got the interests, and we found that some of them weren't great fits, the people that we initially chose, but we'll get to that. But we selected those staff members to step into this new role. And we had conversations and talked to them and made sure that this is something that might be of interest to them. But what we did is we identified at least one person to cover every department within our division. And so the trick is that some departments are smaller, some departments are bigger. And so the bigger departments have one dedicated person, whereas the smaller, they might, two small ones might share the same project management liaison. And so that's really where we got started. We started bringing them together every 2 weeks, every semi-monthly, to just start having conversations about what are some best practices, what are we doing, how can we build a project management methodology that would really fit the need of the entire division. And we really grew from there. We'll get into the specifics in a little bit. But each member, every person that we identified, we started them off in a 6-month probationary appointment. So really a trial run, right? We wanted to make sure that they were a fit for the position and the position was a fit for them. During that time, we paid attention to what are the things we were expecting from them, what was their workload, and then we, at the end of that 6 months, did a little mini evaluation and made a recommendation for which to keep on permanently and which to cycle back out and back to their day jobs on a full-time basis. So we break down the responsibilities of the project management liaison into 5 key areas. And so I'll go through these 5. 1, they're responsible for working with their departments, working with their teams, working with their directors to update and keep updated our project management information system for all the projects in that area. So they're the ones that are sitting in on those project initiation meetings, capturing the project charters and understanding how it aligns to our strategy, and really they're working with those project teams that are actually doing the implementation and execution, just to make sure that we have a connection there back to our central project management office, and to help conversation, but also help to make sure that we can keep consistency in this tool. We have them attend these regular, what we call the project management liaison meetings. There's actually one this afternoon that I'm going to run. So these meetings, we have them attend. These are the conversations that we're having. We're talking about the development of our methodology. We're talking about the what are the tools, what are the gaps, what are the areas of opportunities, how can we move forward project management for our division as a whole. And so it's a really great time. I think every time I think, okay, I'm going to try to keep the agenda light because we always go long, and every time I try to keep the agenda light, we still go long. Just really great conversations. The third one is we're expecting them to collaborate with the other project management liaisons. They're going to be developing best practices, sharing ideas, but also working on this piece of making sure that projects that depend on one another, or projects that relate to one another, they have that line of communication. They're all aware of what are all the projects that are going on inside the division, how do they relate to each other, and how can we make sure that we are working as best as possible as one cohesive division. From there, the other thing that we're having them do is making sure that they are taking those ideas, the conversations we have, and really evangelizing back to their departments about them. So they're meeting with their department leaders, they're meeting with the team leads, the project leads, to share best practices, to share, these are the ideas, here's the things that we're developing, here's what we're working on, to really try to get out there and equip the frontline workers on these projects to make sure that they have the tools, the support, the structure that they need to be successful. But it's also two-way with it, right? They're working with them. They're getting those status updates for those ongoing projects. They're identifying what are the challenges, what are the hurdles, and working with our office to see if we can find a way to overcome those problems and really drive things forward. And the last, we on a monthly basis compile a project report from each of the teams. Every project has updates, what's its status, what are its current challenges, what it has accomplished. And so they all provide those updates for their individual projects, and they all roll up together into a division-wide report. Right now, we're trying to get away. We're working with our tool to get that published to the web, so that we can share that information with the entire university. But right now, we're providing it internally to our ITS division to make sure that people understand, okay, this is what's going on. Here are the projects that are in a flight. Here's estimated completion dates for when we want to see some of these things happen, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So some of the work that we've been doing, again, coming into the role just 13 months ago, one of the things I asked, at the very beginning was, well, how do you define what's a project and what's just, operational work? And everybody had a different answer. And I said, okay, great. We need to have, a single understanding of what is a project and what is not a project. So we worked together, we created that definition for what a project was, what are the requisite components of a project, but also some of those optional components. From there, we actually worked on what we're calling our project sizing matrix. So we have a matrix that just says, what are the different types of categories for projects? What are the different types of characteristics a project might have? What's the project size? How many people are impacted? How big of a change is it? How much technical risk? How much, all those items. And we put together essentially a Qualtrics survey that scores all of that. So somebody can come in, answer the set. I think there's like 8 questions on it. They answer those 8 questions, and it pops back out to them, says, based on that recommendation, based on the information you've given us, we believe that this project is small, medium, large, extra large. And from there, we actually have recommendations for how much methodology you put behind that project. And so we really rely on this to be more of a recommendation than a strict, you have to, or you must. Because people are free to add in or take away some of that methodology as they will. It's really more of what's going to be the most appropriate for you, the project manager, to support that project. What are you going to need to be able to make that successful? We've also worked on automating that project status reporting for the division. I think at the very beginning we were emailing Word documents back and forth, and I was spending hours, combining and collating all of those, sorting them into their various, alignments to strategic priorities. And it was just a lot of manual work. And so we worked quite diligently to put together, it built upon that standardization that we did within our project management tool, that we could, these are the fields, this is the information, the data points that we can pull, that we can automate that. And so that's been a big win for us. Other things, we're talking about templates. I think these are the 2 templates I ended up submitting to the project management community group as both our standardized project intake and our project charter template. These are the things that we're saying, okay, on every project, you should at minimum do these things. This is how we intake a project. Here's the questions that we ask. And then ultimately, here's the project charter that we want to fill out that details out everything from what's the business case to, defining current measurements and future measurements to define project success, to timelines and scope and everything that you would imagine is associated with the project charter. And we're still continuously evolving that and adding more detail to it as we work through it. But we at least created that first implementation. We started working on integrating change management practices, so that organizational change management. If you're familiar with like ProSci, that's what we've been interjecting. We're still working on building out a lot of that methodology there, but we're on our way to really integrating that into the practice of project management. And then last, we same thing with that scoring sizing matrix. We created a matrix to assess project health, to understand, okay, what are the elements of that matrix that we want to assess against? How do we understand, both the health of the project scope, the project cost, the project schedule, all those different dimensions we're evaluating and saying, okay, based on that, we want to share out to the executive team, this project's fine, it's yellow or it's red, and then provide some of that context behind to say, well, this is why it is this way, and these are the steps that we are planning on take to get it out of that state. And so we incorporated that into those conversations that we've been having with the project leaders and the project team leads. So ultimately, over the last 13 months, we've had some success. We've had some what we're calling lessons learned. I think the first thing that we really ran into is that the who for the project management liaisons was really vitally important. We ended up picking some just all-stars for our team, and the problem with all-stars is that they're all-stars in a bunch of areas. And so they were pulled in 17 different directions. And so they're really, their availability to participate was diminished. And so they were great. They were technically competent. They were everything we would want, except just not available. So availability is very, very important, but also interest. Some of them saw this as just, all right, I guess I can try this out. And then they tried it out, and it just really wasn't something that they were passionate about. And so we found that this position really relied on individual passion, because again, everybody who's a project management liaison still has a day job. They still have regular duties they need to complete. We're just reassigning a portion of those. And so if that person was just not interested, it fell away. The second was really what the mission was. I think the original idea was okay, we're going to skill up and train project managers. And so it really started as a PMP study group. So those were the original meetings we were having, but we really had no goals or accomplishments. Our discussions weren't phenomenal. And so we languished a little bit of just, is this the right direction? So we had to reassess, readjust, and move in a different direction pretty quickly. And then the other thing, just some of the duties that list of 5 duties that I laid out, those really evolved over time. And so at the beginning, we didn't have a clear list of duties, and so that's, we started with that PMP study group. We didn't really have these expectations, and so that evolved over time. But also, once we got down to the 6-month evaluation, we said at the original outset we were going to have an evaluation, but we had not really set up the criteria for that evaluation at the beginning. And so when we got to actually performing the evaluation, it was a little bit difficult, right? We had not pre-thought about it, and we needed to adjust quickly. But there's also opportunities for the future, things that we have not gotten to yet. I mentioned, we're still meeting every 2 weeks, but we're going to be talking about, what are the additional project management templates and methodology that we still need? Where are we still lacking? Because we're still in the early stages here. Something that we've really talked about is we want to build this what we're calling toolkit, or this project management toolkit, and we want to extend it out beyond just the ITS division. We want to say, great, if you're in admissions or athletics and you want to run a project, but you don't really know much about project management, well, we have a toolkit that we can generalize and make available for you that you could use, and we have the training and support behind it that if you have questions, you can go to and really be able to use it to much more success. I think really timely for last month's meeting, resource management, capacity planning, these are capabilities we just don't have right now within our division. So this is something that we're going to be building over the next 6 months, really intentionally, just assessment, scoping, estimating skills and effort, and all of those things that go into resource management and capacity planning. Ultimately, we want to build that into a portfolio management / project governance framework, because right now we don't really have the comprehensive data to say when we should be saying yes to projects and when we should be saying no. We really tend to overly say yes, and then we sometimes understand only after we've said yes when that project would be possible to complete. So we're working on those things. These are the things in the future that we really want to develop and build out and work more towards. But that's it in a nutshell. That is the project management liaisons. This is, like I said, this is still all a work in progress. These are the things that we're continuing to work on and evolve as we go. But love to hear questions or feedback, things that maybe I didn't cover so well.
Thank you, Chris. Does anyone have any questions for Chris? They could unmute themselves and ask them, or post them in the chat.
Chris, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I know you said your campus would be working on sizing, but for larger enterprise type projects, do you have a PMP that will own it, or do you just support a liaison to get like a really big project done?
So typically those projects fall onto my shoulders.
Okay.
So all those really big enterprise-wide. Yep, I'm the PMP. I think I'm one of the only ones in the division that has one. But yeah, those are typically my responsibilities.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Chris?
I
Oh,
see a
we
couple-
have one. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I see a couple coming in the chat. So
Mhm.
Adam asked, can you share how you're going to evolve the governance and resource management piece of the next 6 months? That's a great question. I think that there's a lot of unknown in that space for us still. We are very privileged and lucky to be a part of communities like Educause, but also the CSU as a whole is really collaborative. And so I have really close connections with some of the other project management office leaders across the system to really take advantage of what they know and what they can share. And so we're working on building out kind of, first of all, a resource management framework to understand what and how we want to do this, and then ultimately building it into a structured governance process. But a lot of it is this is the direction we're going to go. We don't have a concrete idea of what that'll look like at the end of the day. Faye asked were the liaisons formally assigned with a work release to be a liaison. Yeah, so what we did is we had a within the CSU system, we have what are called stipends. And so we assigned each of the project management liaisons a stipend for 6 months to perform those duties. Ultimately getting to a place where if this was a permanent, a permanent position for them, we built it into a restructuring of their job description. That's really the direction we took with that. Have you updated the liaison's job description? Yes, that's exactly what we've done. I think there's one outstanding project management liaison that does not have it as their permanent job description yet. So we're working on that one. I think it's set to be completed at the end of March that will have that integrated in. Staff size of the ITS department. We have about 120 full-time staff in our ITS department. And that's split across, our various systems, everything from our academic technologies group, our technology support groups, our enterprise teams, our security teams, all of that. What are some examples of the organizations, departments, where the liaisons came from? Were from IT or other departments division. They're all internal to our ITS team. So we have 5 liaisons right now. We have one from our enterprise service management team, one from our information security team, one from our administrative computing team, business intelligence team, one from our enterprise and cloud services team, and one from our digital transformation team. How did we attain leadership buy-in for this initiative? That was something I was very fortunate to have, that just by laying out that business case of, here are the challenges that we see, here's where we're lacking, and here's an idea for how we're going to accomplish that. I think there's a strong sense that project management is a key competency that our division lacks or lacked. And so we're making a concentrated effort towards building that up, extending that, and making it more something that is shared amongst the division. So I think I was fortunate to kind of have that support. And it was just a matter of laying out, okay, this is the plan for how we're going to accomplish this. And this is what it's going to take. So that's how we got that leadership buy-in. We have a charter for no, we don't have a charter, but we have a job description. And that job description ended up being those 5 areas of responsibilities. Project scope limited to IT only or other university units. We typically work on only IT projects, but those IT projects usually work really closely with units outside of the division. So everything from, we're implementing a new CRM system for our College of Education. So the project owner, the project stakeholders are all external, but a lot of the resources for that implementation are internal to IT.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Is there any other questions? Thank you again, Chris, for sharing your story. Just to put a plug in, if anyone is thinking that it would be great to share something that's going on your campus, we're always looking for keynote speakers. Feel free to reach out to myself or any member of the group, the steering committee, and we'd be glad to get you in our schedule. So let me share my screen again, and we're going to transition to the portion of the meeting where we like to get folks meeting each other, doing some quick brainstorming. We're going to go to the breakout rooms now, and our topic for today is transitioning projects to operations. So just a reminder, so we'll break into rooms. You'll kind of be put in a room automatically. And then we ask that each room pick a note taker or a reporter. There will be one member of the PMCG steering committee, hopefully in every room. So that person could be the note taker or the reporter, but they don't have to be. And then afterwards, we'll come back into this large group and just do a quick report back out from each group. So at this point, I am going to stop sharing and open up the breakout rooms.
I'm not Lisa, I'm John, and we're back in the main room coming off of our breakouts. So I know we had a few rooms going on. I will let the folks from my room off the hook. as far as what we talked about. And I will jump in and speak quickly for them. And then what we'll do is hand it off for each of the other groups. So in our room, what we did was we actually talked about two things. One, we talked about the fact that we lost about 30% of our attendees as soon as we mentioned the word breakout. So thank you everybody for sticking around and providing input, insight on that, and why we thought that might be the case, and what things that we can think about to do to not scare folks as much next time. And the key thing that we talked about was our transition to operations, and noting that, I noted in my experience that I've been at my institution for 14 years and feel like we've had projects that have been running that entire time because people do not want to close them out. So two notes that we had, so we have Barbara McKinnon, who's now at Auburn, mentioned one of the things that thank you for waving, Barbara, that she learned early on was making sure that it's not just a drop in the lap at the end of the process. So having the operational teams identified early on in a project lifecycle and participate throughout the project is a key element to what she's had from their successes, and remembering that, because it makes that a lot easier to close out when we get to the back end. The other piece, we've got Faye Snowden, who's at Berkeley now, who's newer to Berkeley, but talked about it at a previous institution. One thing they included was a transition checklist. So top 10 things you can do. And she's had some help, working with help desk experience as well. So been on the receiving end of things. But in doing that was mentioned their checklist. So things to think about and consider as you're closing out the project. So in doing that, what that allowed them to do is have a much more clean closeout process. And Faye has graciously agreed to upload that template and share that template with us as part of our process. So thank you, Faye. So anything I missed from our room, our breakout room?
Yeah. Also, just real quick, I noticed that we only have, do we only have 2 templates on our template, in our template library? Did I read that right?
That's correct. As of this moment, we have not started putting the new templates out there. So that was a carryover from the website that we're going through our rebuild process right now. So it's just showing what was capable. So okay, we're working. Chris Harshman's working on the team that's actually reviewing templates, and we'll get them up and categorized as they get them out there. So we just started the process.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You are welcome. So from one of our other breakout rooms, do we have a member from room 1?
Does it count if we don't remember what room we were in?
Okay, Jen Birch, your room. What did you guys talk about?
You were room 1. You were room 1, Jen.
Yay! So we also lost one person when we started up the room, but we did have a brief conversation in there. I wish I could capture everything that one of our attendees had mentioned, but when we were wrapping up the meeting, we were talking about something very similar to what was already said by Barbara, which is ensuring that you have those stakeholders who will be taking on the care and feeding, if you will, of that service afterward, getting them involved up front. We've actually recently at the University of Michigan rolled out a new life cycle, if you will, for services as well. And part of those early gates that we look at is having a named owner of the service before we get too far down that project. So we did find some pain points of having them identify that before they got too far. People didn't like that as a preventative to getting started. So we were a little bit flexible, but we can't get too far down into that development cycle until that person's been named. So there's a gate where they actually have to have somebody on point, and they have to come up with some sort of an ongoing plan for how they're going to support it afterward as well. So some of those front-loaded activities have to be in place before we'll even complete the project. And we've found that that is eliminating some of the more trivial projects that maybe probably wouldn't get the kind of attention that they needed down the road anyway. If there's not a strong interested party to maintain it and own it, it's probably just going to be a big failure at the end anyway. There was something else that was mentioned too about tying into the project liaison role. And one of the things that I know that we do is that we don't typically give a new project or a new life cycle for a service or a product to a liaison or an accidental project manager. All of those larger development efforts go through the PMO, and a project manager who is well-versed and capable of managing those kind of things and making sure that something doesn't fall through the cracks is going to be the person who manages that type of effort. Project liaisons and some of your more accidental project managers, they can take on some of the smaller scale things, but they're typically not going to be doing the big heavy lifting projects that are going to involve that sort of 3-year, 5-year plan of how this thing's going to live after the project's done. That's about as much as we got in our time.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for the callback to last, to one of our previous topics, which is the accidental project manager and the project manager liaisons. So good tiebacks that it all comes together. Carol,
Chris
do you
is
have
room 2.
room 2?
I think that was me.
Mm-hmm.
Dale shared something that sort of captivated our attention and our conversation. He has a user adoption team or user adoption committee that they're rolling out at his school and at his college. And they reach out and work with stakeholders and sponsors as the project is gearing up through the life cycle of the project. And they do constant check-ins with operationalizing in site already. They pay particular attention to, they have 2 comm specialists and 2 training specialists part of that team. So they have a particular focus on setting up the communication plan and executing that plan and schedule ahead of time so that any disruption or change that's going to be felt by people in their daily jobs is prepared for ahead of time. And then you have a little bit of empathy with them and walk them through all those changes as appropriate. So that was pretty captivating.
Great, thank you, Chris. And another callback to one of our more recent topics was we talked about the organizational change management aspects and preparing teams out there. So great, and Dale, thank you. I appreciate that. And our room 3.
Unfortunately, room 3 kind of bottomed out. So you should probably hop out to room 5.
Room 5.
Okay, I was room 5 along with Vernon, Deborah, and Amy. What we discussed is that everyone loves their project manager and they want to keep us just as long as they possibly can. But when a project ends, that lessons learned meeting is critical to make that break between when a project becomes operational. Just making that clear communication, letting people know, okay, lessons learned is coming up. After lessons learned, we're going to be operational, and also it is beneficial if you, as a project manager, can facilitate the development of your roles and responsibilities when it does go operational. So you do have a clean break. But as Deborah said, we do babysit quite a bit, and groups tend to like to keep us around.
Great. Thank you, Carol. Mm-hmm. So, and any of those, if anybody has those lessons learned or closeout documents, please share them, share those templates. I know that brings a thing. I will upload our closeout document because one of the things that we use is we use our closeout document to identify things like our annual report, to inform that when we put together, to any awards, and we like to, one thing that we've used, our former CIO used to, she'd close it with a party, especially for bigger projects. It's to recognize, and I think that helps give a little bit of closure to things as well. So I am going to move on. Thank you, everybody. I believe that was all of our groups. And just to head over into the presentation and see how this advances, just to remind you, our meeting in March will be on Tuesday, March 16th. And since it's a Tuesday, that means 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Pacific. And Vernon, I can't calculate Hawaii time. So really early for you. So thank you for
Not
always
that early.
Join us. So we'll be back on March 16th. And just, as we talk about is using topics like this, we love to hear voices outside of, across the whole organization and what we're looking at. So some topics that we look at and we've been talking about recently and expanding on are things like we talked about today with the transition to operations, creating the status reports and building on that we talked about last month. And intake and governance is always a hot topic that we look at of how we're prioritizing. I know Lisa is leaving right from this meeting to go into her project prioritization meeting. And I know that's things that we work at in our organization as well, of how we do that. And the measurement of success of projects is one that came up on our survey as very, very, in demand for folks. So anything that people are doing to measure that project success, again, building off the transition operations. In March, there's been a lot of motion on our listserv in the last few weeks related to agile project management. Our very own Jen Birch had actually had a topic that she was planning on delivering. So she'll be here talking about agile next month when we get together. And we are working on partnering with the ITSM community group on things like the transition to operations, because it is very much a service management lifecycle topic as well. So we're working with them on gathering some topics, both independently and as part of the community day that is scheduled for May the 4th. So mark your calendars for that. We don't have the exact times yet, but we are working on it. But it's building off of the community day that Educause did last fall, but this is more open, no registration required from a conference to be able to participate in this half-day activity. So outside of that, we've got our link farm that we share on a monthly basis. Remember that we are reworking our website. Ed is frozen down in Houston right now, so he wasn't with us today, but he's been doing a lot of great work on the website. And Faye, to your point, we will work on getting, as the templates come in, we'll work on getting those up to the website. And our YouTube channel is where we post our recording after the meeting today. So we get that recording in and from Zoom, process it, get it up to YouTube where we can make sure that we do have captioning, et cetera, turned on for it to make sure that we are doing our best to be accessible, and encourage you to share that and share that with your peers. And for those who may have missed it, I did put one extra little bonus out in the chat early on regarding those project templates, of uploading them. When we reach a total of 25 templates out there, we will do a drawing for a $25 Amazon gift card that we can send you virtually. So you can earn up to 3 chances. So if you think you're going to jump in and get 25 templates, we encourage you to do it. But we'll only give you 3 of those chances out of the 25. So we want to spread the wealth a little bit and not too much gaming of the system. We're project managers. We think about those things. So thank you, everybody, for your participation today. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you next month. As always, any questions, feel free to send things to Project Listserv, and we will follow up from there. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay warm, and hopefully you won't get too snowed in wherever you are across the country.
Thanks,
Thanks, John.
everyone.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye now.
Bye.